はい。
Welcome to a special Fantasy on Ice Makuhari episode of Yuzuru Hanyu is my emergency contact, the FanyuFanme Podcast. To quote Yuzu, we have safely made it to another Fantasy on Ice season. But now the question is, will the Fanyus safely make it out? Or, more accurately, do we even want to? While the Makuhari livestream producers may have been unclear on who to focus on, FanyuFanme never has any doubt. It's Yuzu, Yuzu, Yuzu. Sequin jacket Yuzu, Romeo 1.0 hoodie Yuzu, new black pants Yuzu. Yes, they're different. Last time I couldn't get the Winnie headband on, and this time I can't get the fur hood off Yuzu. And even though we're just one stop into the 4-city tour, I already have plenty to say about all that Yuzu showered upon us. Yes, I went there. In this episode, we're yet again focusing on Yuzu's adultness because he just keeps pouring it on. Yes, I went there again. I think we can all agree that counting how many times we've gone there with Yuzu in the past 72 hours isn't really a productive use of our time, especially when we could be spending it rewatching Yuzu's insane Day 3 finale jump combo. Also known as a quad-toed triple axel double what was that? So fill your paper cups with water and hold on to your bracelets, because I can only go so long before watching Real Face again.
せーの。
Yuzu is starting fires with water. Fantasy on Ice made its long-awaited return, and, in typical fashion, Yuzu's performances demanded attention. Demanded, threatened, shook you down in a back alley of Makuhari. I wasn't sure what more I could say about Yuzu's adultness that I hadn't already said in my posts about Masquerade and Blinding Lights. As I watched the photos and videos roll into my Twitter feed at 4 a.m. on the first night, I pondered this. If I was going to say something about all that I had experienced, it needed to be something intelligent, articulate, and meaningful. By the time the final arigatou gozaimashita was shouted, my profound statement had crystallized. Yuzu is so frickin' hot. Profound, right? But how did this differ from all my previous hot dang Yuzu posts? Had Yuzu just managed once again to go somewhere we had never expected, and thus broken the Fanyus who were already barely keeping it together after Beijing? The more reactions I saw, the more it started to become clear. Yuzu's newest program, Real Face, was definitely different in a very real way. Masquerade sent us into dark corners. Blinding Lights settled once and for all that Yuzu is an adult. Real Face? Well, Real Face spawned a Fanyu-wide cry for help. This program actually brought us out of the dark corners, because we realized we couldn't survive this on our own. Gone was the radio silence of the Fanyu trying to independently manage this on the earthy scale of Fanyu personal distress. In came the tweets of, "This is not happening." Sorry, denial Fanyu. No amount of objection is going to put the water back into that cup, which we'll discuss more later. This time, the tweets were just, "Help," or "Help," depending on how foregone you were before you established you needed that help. Best of all, I hadn't even seen the whole program before I knew how this was all going to end, with the Fanyus losing their minds. Who among us didn't predict that outcome? Did we really think we were going to see Yuzu for the first time since the Olympics and just think, Because as the weeks led up to Fantasy on Ice, I wondered how Yuzu could even begin to pick the first thing he would perform after an Olympics where his aura had swallowed the world whole. I would have been perfectly content with him simply doing all his programs like he did at the Beijing practices. We don't need to see the other skaters. Did I just say that? What the heck? It's the truth. We don't need to see the other skaters, especially certain ones. And I think you know which ones you are. While the newspapers made us proud by recognizing that Yuzu should be, and has always been, the focus, the producers of the opening of the Makuhari live stream thought we'd rather see the other skaters struggle through the choreography like they were in a Zumba class, while Yuzu was giving a masterclass on how to sell choreography that, much like a blue and purple wuzzle scarf, could only work on him. Stars on Ice had given us multiple blinding lights camera angles of Yuzu doing that. Why couldn't Fantasy on Ice understand that the entire world, including 90 cinemas full of Fanyus, needed to see him doing this the whole time? You've got a few more shots at this, Fantasy on Ice, so let's reiterate. What do we want? Only Yuzu. Or, to state it more clearly, move, Javi, you're blocking Yuzu. But were we really ready for this Yuzu resurfacing? With no live stream until the third night, we all felt cheated. I think many Fanyu sanities were spared by this lack of real-time footage. We needed to ease into what we were soon to experience. We had to prepare. You know, by putting away breakable items, designating a safe fainting spot, and hiding the phone numbers of divorce lawyers for all you married Fanyus. Because I don't care who you are. After what Yuzu did that first night of Fantasy on Ice, you're going to have some thoughts. Especially after it happened. And we all know what I'm referring to. We've had Fantasy on Ice, Stars on Ice, Dreams on Ice, Yuzu's infamous Scream on Ice, and now, added to the legacy, Paper Cup on Ice, which was nearly upstaged by Bracelet off Ice. When the very first images started to surface, we all questioned what was in Yuzu's hand, and was he sweating? Then we received confirmation, and as I texted to Cactus later, Yuzu apparently flash danced himself. And while Yuzu may have settled for dousing himself with a cup of water, it was going to take way more than that to put out the blazes he ignited in the Fanyus. Way to make water highly flammable, Yuzu. Full disclosure, while everyone was freaking out over the way he picked up the cup, poured the water out of the cup, and threw the cup, especially the Bracelet yelling, "Whee!" I didn't award this glorious and unexpected action as the moment. For the moment, you needed to wait 2 seconds more, because after the cup was satisfyingly recycled in the general direction of the audience, we witnessed the hair grab. I have made some rather bold statements about my attraction to Yuzu's hair over the course of FanyuFanme's lifetime, and I don't anticipate them stopping. Even though I love the uniqueness of the hood look on Yuzu, I mean, he was bound to turn into a video game character eventually, right? We're just lucky he didn't turn into Gyoza. I appreciate that it wasn't long before Yuzu made sure to push the hood down so we had real hair to go with real face. It was probably more of a jump logistic issue, but I'd like to believe it was also Yuzu's awareness that some of us, particularly a podcaster named FanyuFanme, have a high level of earthy scale of personal preference when it comes to his hair, and we want to see it. Once the third performance finally arrived and we could see real face in its life-changing entirety, I attempted to count just how many times Yuzu grabs his hair in this program, but it ended up going something like this. 1, 2, 3. What was I doing again? And isn't it hot in here? I know we were all as surprised by the cup choreographic gem as we were by the Haru Yokoi snowfall and the masquerade glove throw. I was going to include the hello I love you heart draw, but I'll spare reminding you of the GOE on that one, Yuzu. But Yuzu did give us a hint. He had told us in a pre-Fantasy on Ice interview that he's very hot when he skates at Fantasy on Ice. So, technically, it was 2 hints. 1, I am hot, obviously. 2, I may have a plan on how to cool off and blow up the fandom at the same time. You use your time so efficiently, Yuzu. Knowing Yuzu's perfectionism, he probably watched the first night's video back and thought, the cup needs 1/8 of an ounce more water in it to achieve the exact hair flip I was going for. In fact, I wonder if they started to sell special tickets to people who wanted to be seated in the Fantasy on Ice splash zone. Prior to this program, your best hope of audience interaction with Yuzu was him falling safely on one of his jumps and sliding to a stop at the foot of your extremely expensive folding chair. Now, you might get splashed by a drop of water that glanced off Yuzu, or have the paper cup ricochet off your kneecap. Either way, a definite Fantasy on Ice win. And no, the prize for a Fantasy on Ice win is not Yuzu's bracelet. I hope the merchandise vendors took advantage of all these product opportunities by selling commemorative reproductions of the paper cup and Chi Chi Chisai Chia Yuzus. +5 GOE to the Fanyus who got that Chia joke. Paper Cup on Ice definitely proved a point. Self-proclaimed not sexy Yuzu is having fun with his sexiness. It's time to take the training wheels off of sexy Yuzu. He has figured out how to ride this bike, but he still may stay close to home because it is clear that our same Yuzu, who was mortified to expose his shoulder during Shoulder Scandal 2018, is still in there, underneath the second shirt he was wearing as Splash Zone of Sexiness Protection. Maybe by the time he gets to Nagoya, he'll be doing those only I should do this move bestie squats in the white sweater and red Ghana scarf. Help! Then, to add more water to the fire, wait a minute. Sweet, innocent Yuzu had the nerve to tell an interviewer that he wasn't sure how it went over, but he hoped that moment made everyone's hearts go, ooh-ah, even just a little bit. Yuzu, this was not a moment which made everyone's hearts go, ooh-ah. This was a tidal wave of sexy that made everyone's heart scream, yabai! The meaning of yabai has quite the range. Definitions include OMG, dangerous, amazing, cool, insane, extreme, marry me Yuzu, etc. Sometimes I think the more Yuzu knows he rocks the world, the more he plays it down. And that makes me like him. Just a little bit. All this to say, it was another blissful weekend in the wonderful world of utopia, where the only things you need are a strong internet signal, a soft pretzel, and for those of us in dramatically different time zones from Japan, the ability to keep your eyes open for approximately 44 hours straight. Once I hit hour 34 of no sleep, I found myself bumping into walls, but by golly, I was bumping into them happily, and then asking them, "Did you see Yuzu grab his hair?" Happiness is Yuzu continuing to skate for us. Happily. I think we all have theories on what we think is going to happen next, and what we think Yuzu might be thinking based on what we know about Yuzu and his thinking. But deep down, we are all doing the same thing, which is keeping it to ourselves. because we are afraid to say anything out loud either way. For now, we just bask in knowing that we are going to continue to see Yuzu in Fantasy on Ice for several weekends to come. We'll deal with the rest of it later. Right now, we still have Yuzu. And right now, that and a certain paper cup of water are all that matters. And of course, the hair.
完成です。
Yuzu's downplaying of his paper cup choreography reminded me of another time when Yuzu's humility was, well, laughable. It was during the Pyeongchang press conference after he won his second Olympic gold medal. He had just given his now legendary answer about the Winnie the Poohs going back to the forest. You know the one.
The Winnie the Pooh, we go there. We go to back to their I don't know how to say it. Back to their forest. Just kidding.
After leveling the room with wit, humor, generosity, sincerity, and slap-down preciousness, he actually asked the reporter,
Is it good?
That answer wasn't good, Yuzu. That answer could bring about world peace. The only thing you could have done to improve it would have been to spike your cup of water on the table when you were through. Ooh-ah. While we all wait to see what Yuzu is going to make our hearts say next, you can follow FanyuFanme on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Redbubble, YouTube, or FanyuFanme.com, because the only thing you can really do while waiting to see Yuzu is look forward to seeing Yuzu. Until next time, say it with me, Yuzuru Hanyu. The FanyuFanme Podcast is a Back to the Forest production.
Back to their forest? Just kidding.